can't believe we're doing this. I think you and I have both decided that at the bare minimum, 5 or 6 people are going to listen to this because between, your family, my dad for sure, I don't know.
Yeah, the friends who we pay to listen in.
That's right. The bots that we hire to make it look like there's a lot of people listening.
That's true. And at least the employees at CRE Daily, right?
Yeah. We should mention we're coming from CRE Daily's world headquarters.
Yes.
So all 125 people here will be listening.
That's
for
right.
Sure.
That's right. All the high-paid real estate executives. This is great.
It's good. Well, I mean, we should probably talk about where this name comes from, right? I mean, so I'll tell you, when I first was thinking of this name and I heard no cap, I'm thinking, cap rate, capital stack, capital expenditures. I'm thinking, no cap to what you can do.
Right.
But then I found out that the kids use that saying in another way. How do they use it?
I believe it means to not lie. And for the record, so you came up with the name.
No, I didn't come up with the name.
No, that's not what you said. I just want to let you know that this is being recorded.
I don't want to take the credit for the genius that is CRE Daily, okay? But
I don't blame you.
So it means truth or real talk or what
I like the double entendre to it.
Can mean a lot of things.
Can mean a lot
which
of
is
things.
Cool.
It's great.
A lot of puns.
Presumably.
Okay, so the goal of the podcast, I think, we want to talk about commercial real estate, talk about some of the top stories in CRE Daily that everybody's reading. But the trick is also not making this incredibly boring.
Yeah.
And so that's the balancing act, right?
That's the real estate podcast epidemic. Is being incredibly boring.
They're terrible.
Terrible.
Can I tell you? I think I mentioned this to you. One of the guys, I'm like asking guys on the team, hey, any commercial real estate podcasts you'd recommend? And a few guys kind of shot me back some examples. The first thing one of the guys showed me, I listened to like 10 minutes of this thing. I wanted to shoot myself. It was the most boring commercial real estate podcast I've ever listened to. And this is what he was recommending me listen to. So I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to read a script, right? But we want to teach people a thing or two also. So that's what's...
Yeah, sure. Hopefully if nothing else, this piques someone's interest.
Yeah.
All 15
easily
combined listeners.
Easily.
So let's get into it. I think CRE Daily shot out a couple of really good articles this week.
Yeah.
A couple that really caught my interest. I think there's a few that definitely caught your interest. I know we've been texting about it back and forth. There's a really big headline in the market today. And, I think a lot of people, when they see that KKR or Blackstone are in the market, they expect big numbers, right? They're expecting billions of dollars, massive transactions, huge portfolio transactions. So it tends to get a little looked over. This one stuck out.
I think it makes the headlines, right? Because KKR, big company, and they're starting to put a lot of their capital back into real estate. I think it shows signs that maybe we've hit bottom and it's all up from here. And I think what tends to happen is you see kind of more the private capital follow that institutional capital, just basically kind of taking their strategy and seeing that there's some movement and maybe it's time to get back into things.
Yeah. And look, these are the blue chip leaders in the market, right? This is who every firm looks out at. This is who everybody wants to be and replicate. And, and they want to say that they're on the same trend. So
2.1 billion, right? They brought this Quarterra multifamily portfolio out of California.
For those who don't know, Quarterra is Lennar's, definitely a top national developer. Big fans of their work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big fans.
So KKR shelled out $2.1 billion for them, right? And I think they purchased something like 5,200 units.
Yeah.
So my rough, back of the napkin math, like we like to say, is around 400,000 a door, 403 a door, something like that.
Pretty juicy. I mean,
pretty juicy number.
What people, don't maybe understand outside the multifamily space, and I can tell you from my perspective, just because it's all I talk about with clients these days, is multifamily took a huge hit over the last couple of years Why? Because of interest rates, like everyone else is having to deal with, but also expenses have gone up tremendously. And, you're talking insurance, taxes, and so forth, and also just oversupply. In Texas in particular, there's just been so much in development over the last couple of years. And so it's just going to take time for that occupancy to pick back up and get those units absorbed, which will happen. But I think this is a good sign that things are moving in the right direction.
Yeah. And before I get into this article, that's something that I want to ask you about. You've been super transactional. Are you seeing the expectations in the multifamily side between sellers and buyers yet? Where are the brokers? Like, where's that whole community at? Are people finally getting the wind of it and saying, all right, like I am way too pressured. I know that the buyers have tons of dry powder. Everybody's sitting on the sidelines. That's been the headline for the last 2 years, 3 years at least, right? Since COVID was going to be the big recession.
Right.
Everyone was going to jump all over it and buy up all the housing stock, and then you and me are going to rent for the rest of our lives.
That's right.
So what are you seeing? What do you think the sentiment's been?
We always talk about the bid-ask gap, that gap between, what buyers are willing to pay and what sellers are willing to sell for. We call it the bag. No one calls it that. I just made that up.
You have all this Gen Z terminology just loaded in you between no cap and the bag.
I mean, you gotta understand, like, our team hears these things all the time, and we're like, we should just come up with acronyms, because it's like it's the same conversation over and over again.
Because everyone knows the acronyms.
Yeah. Bid, ask, gap.
There's definitely not too many acronyms in real estate.
So that's narrowing, right? I mean, we've seen prices come down about 20%, and I think finally we're starting to see some real sellers in the market, whether they have to sell because of, the capital market situations, or they just think it's a good time to, exit, and they can still hit whatever returns they're trying to hit. So we're seeing it all, but transaction volume is finally coming back up little by little. It's getting there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So I do want to talk about this article. So we mentioned what they shelled out per unit. Look at the markets that they bought in, right? They're buying in Washington, California, Colorado, Texas, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina. These are kind of the repeat offender markets, right? I feel like a lot of people try to put weighting systems and rank markets, but it tends to always be the ones that you hear about.
Goes back to the same markets always.
It's never a surprise, right? So if you dive into the numbers a little bit, right? Like I'll tell you a couple things that came to my mind.
Yeah.
First thing is, is this a fair price? What are they paying? What are they actually shelling out per unit? So we mentioned that they're spending around $400 a door. Okay, so what does it look like to own in these markets, right? Because we know that there's always this cross section of, is it cheaper to own or cheaper to rent? Mm-hmm. And this is how the investors are thinking, and this is part of what triangulates their price. So you look at a place like California, right? Median price of a home, $900,000, right? This is from USA Today. Colorado, $610,000. And then you get to a place like Florida where it starts to equalize a little bit, right? So $410,000 for owning a house. And again, I don't know if California's weighted up. Maybe it's like the Palo Alto markets are really pushing up those numbers. The outskirts of San Francisco or some of these crazy homes in Malibu.
I mean, look, Texas is insane now too, right? I mean, there's in DFW. I mean, I remember when there was nothing built 10 minutes north of the CBD, right? I mean, 10 minutes north, nothing. Now you have Prosper, Salina, Frisco. These markets where now, I mean, you need to put down, these entry-level homes are $500,000 now easily. In places that were just farms, a decade ago.
So I'm thinking that's a really good point, right? And I'm thinking about, all right, so you have the states where it's weighted so high, right? The Californias, Colorados, as I mentioned. North Carolina on the cheaper side, $385,000, right? That's median price of owning a home. Georgia, $333,000. So it's a pretty big disconnect from bottom to top, right? You're talking about a $600,000 gap. They're paying $400 and change per unit. So I start to question, okay, so let's assume it's somewhere in line. It's the median of those. What does it look like to, for the consumer? What are they spending on rent versus owning, right? So I'm really trying to understand the dynamic of what they're buying. So when I looked at it, And I was going off Bankrate. Bankrate's published a couple of great articles. They've really looked into this. In April, they took the top 50 metros, analyzed median prices, and analyzed the buying versus renting costs. So, they said the median price was $412, a little bit different than what they quoted the national average was. And, in the first markets that I mentioned, I think they said it was $407.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of see KKR buying at the same level as the national average. Not particularly scary. You have to really dissect it market by market.
Yeah,
right
these
now.
are core markets. These are newer assets.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the Class A's of the Class A's. So, can be expected.
Yeah. So when you look at the top 50 metros, right, if you're taking what Bankrate's saying is their median price of $412, they believe that the cost of owning is 37% higher than renting today.
Damn. Yeah. That's a lot.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Right. That's huge. So they say that your average costs are about $2,700 on the ownership side versus just under $2,000 on the renting side. I would absolutely love to rent for $2,000 in New York. I don't think I'd ever see that day.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, well, what's nuts is in Dallas. I mean, I remember you could get a really nice place 5 years ago for $1,300. I mean, those same places are now renting out for $2,500 easily. I would say $3,000 for a nice 1-bedroom, maybe a little study in uptown, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it still makes sense to rent, which is what's nuts. Are you looking to build sustainable wealth and achieve financial freedom? Viking Capital can help you do just that through multifamily investing. With a team of seasoned real estate experts, Viking Capital conducts deep financial analysis and data-driven asset management to deliver outstanding returns.
So what's KKR betting on here, right? So they're buying around the national average of the home, right?
Yeah.
Well,
I just think
scary.
I think they know that we've kind of hit bottom, and I think they're kind of following, the Blackstones kind of the world, who have recently also announced, a big inroad into multifamily again too. So I think hopefully good things to come, right, from just following these institutional big guys.
If you're on the investor side, great.
Yeah,
great. Right.
Good for you. Yeah.
Almost 40% more expensive to own a home than to rent.
Yeah, you're in a good spot. As long as you don't have debt maturing anytime soon, right? As long as you don't have some floating rate debt right now that you got to worry about, or an interest rate cap, you're good. You're good. So we should get into, another story. Big banks looking to unload a lot of underperforming CRE loans, and that's mostly office focused, which quite a bit about. I don't think that's a surprise. I guess. Some of these banks are going kind of through this under the radar, and this was reported in the New York Times. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, a lot of thoughts on it, right? It's something I feel like this is really a trend that we've been hearing about for a long time, right? And when you think about the pool of distressed buyers and everybody loading up, these multi-billion-dollar funds to start purchasing real estate, distress is the hottest word you could say, right? And where does that come from? It comes from buying underperforming or non-performing debt, looking for investors whose equity has been wiped. But let's think about what the banks are really going through here. So when we talk about debt getting offloaded, there's different kinds of debt. I think if I read it correctly, just under 50% was like 44-45% of that debt was all CLO debt, right? Collateralized loan obligation.
Right.
So it's not your super secure AAA rated CMBS loans.
Yeah.
There's a lot of transitional assets, a lot of acquisition loans.
Interesting. And by the way, same in multifamily, right? I mean, for those who don't know, like Alex was saying, CLO, collateralized loan obligations, kind of a newer version of the CDO, which was part of the cause of the GFC. Yeah. And these are risky loans, right? A lot of lenders have stepped up, debt funds have stepped up to provide these loans over the last couple of years. Yeah. And they're supposed to be short-term bridge
They're definitely
debt.
riskier loans.
Very risky.
Yeah, they're definitely riskier. I think the banks got scrutinized after GFC
right.
Well enough. Your lending parameters have definitely tightened. LTVs have come down. But you really have to look at the makeup of what's being sold. I think it's really easy to get caught up in in the fear mongering, right?
Yep.
Of all of these loans are distressed, but it's not to say that there isn't trouble, right? I saw this new term in reference of the CLOs, which I hate.
What is it?
I hate. So
I hate a lot of these new terms.
I know. You probably have heard survive to 25.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Everybody wanted to survive to 25.
I almost got a tattoo that says survive till 2025.
Yeah, I think it would have looked great.
My dad would have loved that, I'm sure. And my whole family would have jumped for joy on that.
I bet. The new one that they're using, and maybe I'm wrong. This is all my speculation, but by the time that these terms get mentioned in the news, it's a lot of analysts, associates, interworkings of the banks and the funds who have been using these terms, right? Maybe a little too frivolously. Pretend and extend.
Oh God, pretend and extend. I'm so tired of it, man. I mean,
you've heard it before.
Oh, come on, man. It's like every conversation. Well, I guess you just gotta pretend and extend a little bit more, right?
That's a terrifying thing, right? Like, especially in the context. I'm seeing this in the context of loan modifications and defaults, right?
Right.
So you're talking about employees of massive banks, huge banking institutions, huge credit funds saying pretend and extend. What are we pretending?
Oh, dude. Yeah. And a lot of them have warehouse lines of credit from other banks. And at some point, the train's going to stop. I think it's already slowing down. But yeah, survive till 2025, extend and pretend. I'm going to be curious when we get to 2025. What's the next thing, right?
What is it that we're pretending? What are we pretending? Are we pretending that
we're pretending interest rates come down by a full 2 points, in the next 12 months, which I don't see happening. But I mean, any relief is good relief. So we'll see.
Man, just at the end of May, there was $210 billion in securitized maturities that were expected to come due, and now we are pretending that they're not due.
Right.
We're pretending that the values aren't super high and that interest isn't accruing. Are we pretending that?
And by the way, how are you going to get that accrued interest?
Well,
right. I think that's another
thing. So you beat me
thing.
to it, right?
Yeah.
So are we pretending that the borrowers are going to be able to pay this back?
That's right. I've talked to enough, more like some more private capital syndicators in DFW who are they're on this road of just they're accruing interest and the lender thinks they're going to get that on the back end. Best of luck. It's just I don't see it happening, but we'll see. Hey, it's not all doom and gloom. There's opportunities to be had in some of this, and sure, there's going to be a lot of folks who will make it and get past the hurdle. I'm sure. Let's get into the San Francisco office vacancy rate reaching a record high of 37%, which I guess like this is no surprise. Like, we were just talking about office earlier. Office has been struggling for some time. San Francisco in particular.
Yeah.
I know you probably have a lot of insights in the San Francisco office market. I think, what's interesting is, I read that some are kind of seeing this as a good sign because it just shows the market might be actually stabilizing and adjusting accordingly. And I think a lot of people think the AI boom is going to just blow away all this vacancy.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point, right? So stabilizing versus, I would probably call it right sizing, right? And right sizing is it's not a new term. It's something that we've heard for a while. It started in retail centers, probably 10 years ago. In general, the total demand for retail, right? We wanted to right size how much retail is actually out there.
Yeah.
I think the same thing has happened to a large extent in the office market. Again, I think it's one of these headlines that gets really overblown. This is something you and I have talked about ad nauseum, right? The office market sentiment, it's like, comparatively, it's like saying that multifamily in Mobile, Alabama is the same as multifamily in New York, right?
Mobile's hot right now.
Mobile's hot. They sold
There's a new Amazon factory
150 units, and that's you can compare that to the Brooklyn markets or the New York markets, right? It's super microcosm, right? Forget that every market is different. The submarkets in every market are different, right? Take New York, for example. You can't compare office in Financial District with office on 57th and 5th in Park Plaza, right? And I think I read one of these articles that said like majority of the office vacancy is concentrated in something like 10% of buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you have these 1,000,000+ square foot buildings hanging out in your downtowns where nobody's walking anymore.
Right.
You have the work from home effect. Everyone's, back at their place. It's really conceivable. Right. So now going back to San Francisco, San Francisco, massive metropolitan market, right? Extremely comparable to New York.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's, again, not to say that these are the same markets, but New York, San Francisco are these big gateways.
Right.
So to say that.
Well, San Francisco pretty well, right? Because you have some business over there.
Yeah, yourself. I've been involved in the ownership of a lot of these buildings.
And all I hear is doom and gloom about San Francisco, but I think they're making steps to go in the right direction as well, and everything's a cycle, and hopefully come back. You said before, like, you think maybe the AI boom is what's going to give life to San Francisco. I'll tell you anecdotally, going out there, the office market's bleak. Right. Yeah. There's no denying that. You had a lot of tech workers who are working from home, but they didn't have an exodus. So I went out to a restaurant with a couple of friends, probably 8 p.m., 9 p.m. Mm-hmm.
It was booming.
Mm-hmm.
And like midweek, it's booming.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There's a ton of people still in San Francisco. I don't think people are fleeing the city.
Yeah.
But I do think that the working dynamics changed. Obviously, this is a pioneering
car
city.
theft, man. I had
car theft is a real thing.
Good client of mine based out of San Francisco had a couple of brokers from Texas go up there and meet with them. They went for dinner for like an hour, came out, and their car was broken into. I want to say their tires were stolen, but I might be making that up.
Did you ever see the sad videos of people, posting, "Please don't break into my car," on a piece of paper and slamming it on?
I respect that.
Do you respect it when the windows still get smashed in?
No, it's not a good sign for society when you see that. But
well, I think I think there's definitely a lot of political imbalance, let's say, that's leading to this. But
hey, let's not get political. All right?
Let's not
keep
get
politics
political.
out of this.
Let's not. But let's talk about the. I will say the people who are still in San Francisco.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think they're really banking on
a recovery.
This AI boom.
Yeah.
That'll be the breath of fresh air. It's the capital. It's probably the hub of every software engineer in America, right?
Yeah.
It was like the gold rush.
Well, look, that's the problem right now is what I'm reading is, the AI boom, while it's helping, it's not making up for the lack of renewals and downsizing of so many firms. So, we'll see over time, I guess, where that goes. Let's jump into Goldman Sachs real quick. We were already kind of talking about, all this capital being allocated into multifamily now, but, they just announced a $3.4 billion fund, their Vintage Real Estate Partners 3 fund.
Yeah.
They also had a VREP2 fund that closed in 2020 for $2.7 billion. And so, of course, like we were talking about earlier, we're seeing all these rival institutional players trying to, allocate some money and raise some capital to get back into the game because I think they see the opportunities on the horizon. So, you had Ares raise a pretty big fund recently, and Blackstone's $2.5 billion fund that closed not too long ago too. So some big things happening. Again, I just think what happens is with these institutional groups, you're going to start to see, I think, more momentum and more capital start to get deployed.
Are you looking to build sustainable wealth and achieve financial freedom? Viking Capital can help you do just that through multifamily investing, offering a powerful way to grow your wealth passively. Passive investing with Viking Capital allows you to benefit from a lucrative world of real estate without the hassles of day-to-day management. Their team of seasoned real estate experts takes care of everything from sourcing high-potential properties to managing them efficiently, so you can enjoy the returns without the stress. Yeah, so the Goldman one's an interesting fundraise, right? So they're targeting secondaries, and you might have mentioned, secondaries. For those who don't know, it's the buying of limited interests. So if I'm a limited partner, your LPs who are out in the market, I might have a position with a really good sponsor in a market. So Goldman is gearing up to buy down those positions. They're also gearing up to, just provide liquidity in general, where in a more flexible manner, right? Mm-hmm. And when you think about that, you have a lot of funds who are invested in the United States. Some of these funds are on year 5 of 7. year 6 of 7. So now the time pressure is on. You know, you've been a broker for a long time.
Yeah,
you know
sure.
that these are not quick transactions. These
Right.
things don't close in 30 days when you're dealing with $100 million plus assets. So Goldman's looking to capitalize on a situation where people are feeling the time pressure, right? Money has to get returned to investors. That could mean buying for cheaper, right? You can have sponsors who have blown out, right? And Goldman can now come in at a discounted basis potentially and get access to really good institutional quality deals.
Right. Makes sense. Makes sense.
And look at the people who they mentioned they want to work with. Down Management, right? Danny Rublin. It's I've watched this guy become a powerhouse. Like he started in New York and now, you know, he's going to be a top tier sponsor for Goldman, sitting on a couple of $1 billion. Not a bad position to be in.
We should have him on the pod.
I would love that. You know,
let's make it happen.
I would love that. Think about what else Goldman's doing, right? Goldman, I think they raised about $7 billion for credit, real estate credit. And I feel like you and me probably hear this the most, right? When we hear people raising funds, it's always on the credit side. Everybody wants to be the lender.
That's right.
Who the hell is your borrower?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who still has the money to borrow? And I feel like there's becoming this missing middle in the transaction that we're not hearing, right? So you have people raising massive funds for credit. You have people raising big secondaries funds, right? They all want to be the LPs. Who are the successful GPs? Who are the successful sponsors who come out of this? Where are these $100 million GP funds?
Right.
And it's a tough position to be in, right? If you're the common equity right now, stock market has been on fire, right? It tends to go up in years of you know, presidents running and a new election. So who wants to be in the common equity with someone? It's a tough place to be.
Oh, it's tough. And you see all these positions where, you know, common equity is getting wiped currently right now, and so you feel bad for those folks, especially if they're just kind of retail investors.
So especially the GPs who have, you know, gone under, so to say, or haven't had good performance. You've got a ton of fresh LP money, right? With new timelines, right? You're buying out that fund that's in year 5 or 6 of its 7-year fund life, or maybe even quicker. That's a new time horizon, right?
Yeah.
What happens to the GP? Who are the sponsors who can take this over successfully? You know, growing up in New York and having worked a fair portion of my real estate career here, I think about the families, right? These powerful New York families that you hear about with deep balance sheets. Those guys are winners, right? But
those guys are always winners.
Not the majority of the United States.
Right.
That's not the majority of buyers out there. It is a lot of retail investors, like you said. So I think it's something that we should pay attention to this year. We should listen out to who are these like big sponsors who are coming up. I think it's really interesting that groups like Dallin, hopefully I said that right, are gearing up.
No one's listening anyways.
Nobody's listening, right? Sorry, my 15 followers. I do think it's interesting that they're teaming up with like powerhouses like Goldman Sachs, right? These programmatic relationships.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to derail too much, but then you had all these redemption requests coming in also not too long ago, and still. So there's a lot of factors at play, and there's a whole nother episode. We can get into this and talk for hours.
True.
Let's go into Biden introducing a new $100 million affordable housing program. He's really just trying to expand the LIHTC program, low income housing tax credits, because affordability, we were just talking about it. No one can afford homes anymore. So
it's 40% more expensive to own a home.
There you go.
Than it is to rent.
So nothing else to really talk about there other than I think that's
$100 million bucks, huh? That's it?
Yeah. Like, wait, how many trillions did we just spend on student loans? I don't know.
Yeah.
A lot. You know.
Throw $100 million bucks to
money's not real anymore when it comes to the government.
It's not real. It's not real anymore.
Okay, only 8% of U.S. office buildings are thriving. We kind of talked about this earlier.
Yeah.
I guess we don't need to go over this too much, but you know, we're really seeing the more, and you tell me too, because you're in the office space.
Sure.
Like I think more of the newly built, amenitized office buildings seem to be crushing it. I'm thinking of Hudson Yards in New York, which I believe is doing pretty well. I'm also thinking in Dallas, in my hood, we have the Knox Street development.
Yeah.
And this is interesting. This is a really great area, kind of by Highland Park and University Park. Really nice neighborhoods in Dallas, not too far from the CBD and downtown. And they just developed a really new, very, very sexy looking office development. And they're getting up to $108 per square foot, according to JLL, which is just
wow. This is
in Dallas.
In Dallas.
In Dallas, yeah. Isn't that insane?
Those are record numbers.
Record.
I don't think Dallas has ever seen that kind of run.
Never. No. This is pretty astounding that they're able to command that type of.
Yeah, you hear
rent.
these 3-digit, rents per square foot for office in New York. You almost don't bat an eye.
Yeah.
And that's pretty recent also. I mean, there's obviously been transactions over $100 a foot for years now, but recently it's really picked up. It's almost becoming the new norm.
But then what about all these other guys, right? I mean, it's interesting because, I would assume that, these Class B and certain Class C office spaces have to be hugely discounted right now to compete, right? Interesting.
So, you brought up a good point before, and it's the kind of buildings that are winning, right? So the work from home dynamic definitely derailed the entire office sector, right? And it's become not only a new norm and commonplace where people have adjusted how many days people are coming into the office versus going fully remote. I know my wife's fully remote, but put yourself in the shoes of an employer. Like, what does it take for you to get your people into the office? You can be the bully and you can pound your fist and say, we have to be here and it's killing productivity.
Take it or leave it. Yeah.
Or, you can use positive affirmations.
Yeah, you use the WeWork play, have some kegs and
and I think that leads into who the winners in the market are right now, right? You need an Equinox level gym. You want cold plunges.
Sick.
You want your
Keep them coming.
Massage therapist.
Yes.
You need coffee to be brought to you
100%.
every
Nitro
5
cold
minutes
brews.
nitro cold brews.
Yeah.
You need dining in office.
You need oat milk. You need almond milk.
You need all the milks.
Coconut milk.
All
would
the
be
nut
nice.
milks.
Yeah.
But
that's how you're going to get people in the office now. I mean,
you need to have
take
milk.
it or leave it.
You need to have a lot of milk.
A lot of milk.
Diversity.
Milk diversity will get
and inclusion.
We'll get
all milk needs to be included.
Yeah. You'll get butts and seats that way.
But jokes aside, that's really what's setting the winners apart right now. We'll have a couple of guests on in the near future who are New York office market experts. And they'll tell you about what's going on here. But there's truly a dearth of buildings like that.
Yeah.
It's even when you think about Hudson Yards was planned over 10 years ago, right? Yeah. So as relatively new as it is,
took time.
It's already, kind of out of place for the post-COVID dynamic. Now, right. I know that.
Well, what if they bring a casino there? I mean,
they might bring a casino there.
Hello.
That'll get workers in. I like to camp.
It'll do something.
I personally, you need to gamble for the for the adrenaline rush.
Listen,
and then hit the office.
They're basically, a lot of them are gambling already professionally when it comes to some of these investments. So you might as well just go downstairs and put it all in red.
Yeah, look, and related, being the big owner out there, those guys are top tier operators.
Right.
They've done a ton of repositioning, even of the existing assets. They're doing
and
a good job.
You get an Equinox, right?
And you get an Equinox.
So that's pretty cool.
Right. So that checks the one box off the list for what makes you, the largest office owner.
That's right. People want that stuff when they go to work.
I mean, think about it. Wouldn't you? Right? Don't you want to be? You have to spend 8 to 12 hours a day, depending on your profession here. Yeah. Right. Don't you want to be comfortable? Don't you want?
It makes sense.
The ritz and glitz and
it makes sense. I mean, look, I wouldn't want to be running into my boss or my peers at the gym. Right. Yeah. I don't. I think you got to have somewhat of a line between professional and personal, but that's just me. I don't know.
Conversely, you don't run into them at all at home. Yeah. I know I'm going to get decapitated for this by my work from home listeners.
Oh man,
all 4.5 of you.
Work from home, it's cool. Just
what's your take on it? You like? You like working from home?
I like it. I think there should be a hybrid model where it's 3 days on, 2 days off. I think realistically, you're going to work from home, and some people are going to totally shit on me for this, but I don't think you're as efficient of a worker when you work from home, right? You find things to procrastinate with.
This wouldn't be a good podcast if somebody didn't shit on you.
No. But I think you still get all your work done. I just think you get it done at off times, right? You find ways to work after 6, after 7, after 8 p.m. because you're working from home. So I don't think it's good for your
Isn't
mind.
It kind of crazy how blended the day has become?
Yeah,
right?
it's all one. It's, you know what? It's this damn thing.
Yeah.
This damn thing.
We're always
we can't
connected.
escape it now. You know?
We're just always on.
That's why I'm getting a Razor.
You're going to get the new Razor?
The new Razor. It looks sick. You've seen the commercials?
Shout out to Razor. Send us 2 of those models. At least 15 people will look into a Razor.
It's worth it. You'll sell tons of models.
You'll sell tons.
Okay. What's the next thing? National Trucker U.S. Logistics Solutions filing for bankruptcy. That's ending 2,000 jobs and taking 500 trucks off U.S. highways.
That's
a sign of the times for the freight industry. Alex, what have you?
Man, so what a great statement.
We saw
it's a weird one, right? So you're saying that this is a logistics company,
yeah.
right? I'm not familiar with them, but this is a logistics company, and they're laying off how many people?
It says 2,000 jobs
and 500 trucks.
Yeah,
aren't we in a massive boom of like ordering more on Amazon, huge consumer spending online?
And someone, maybe we have an expert on the pod at some point and we talk about this, but I think it's been oversaturated a little bit, post-COVID, just so many more trucks put on the road and so forth. Again, could be completely wrong, but that's just my hypothesis here.
If you are a logistics and industrial expert,
call us.
Please reach out.
We'll have you
us.
on. It'll be
we definitely come educate Jack and I on not knowing it. But let's look at it as the
Yellow
common
Corp,
man.
Right? They declared bankruptcy just last year. Another big trucking company. So, so things are changing in that world. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's keep it moving. Softening throughout most of 2022 and 2023 for apartments. We already kind of talked about that. But U.S. apartments have kind of held steady now through 2024.
And is this on the vacancy and absorption side?
This is on the
rents?
vacancy side mostly. We're just talking about what we're seeing about 94.2% occupancy in May. This is across the country. There's different markets are going to be different.
Sure.
That's coming from RealPage Market Analytics. So I trust those guys. Shout out to RealPage.
Shout out to RealPage.
Okay. Anyways, so
the softening is worth talking about, right? Or the stabilizing. I mean, it's weird that they say the softening of the market, right? You have a 95% occupied market.
It's softened over the last couple of years, and now we're starting to stabilize. Yeah.
Right. I wonder how many. And is this like a top 50 metros thing, or is this what they're looking at? Or are they looking at,
dude, I don't know,
broader data?
I think it's just macro across the country, and
I really wonder how many markets. Is there a Miami that's really spiking this number through the roof?
Well, dude, it's crazy. In Dallas, I can tell you that we saw vacancy go from 5% in multifamily just a couple of years ago to now like 10%. That eats into your numbers big time. So, that's a market that got tremendous supply coming online over the last couple of years and still quite a bit coming online this year and finally kind of taking a nosedive next year and the following year. But, I think absorption will pick back up for markets like Dallas. And there's certainly not a lot coming online scheduled for 2026, 2027. If you have a new development getting leased up in those years, I think you're going to crush it. But anyways, I think that's good for that. We want to get into, I guess, another thing, which is a different asset class. Let's talk about kind of how the U.S. retail leasing market is handling right now. And I'll tell you, by the way,
how is it handling right now?
Apparently, it's handling pretty good. And I'll tell you, I remember not that long ago being like, man, retail sucks. Like, I'm so glad I'm not in the retail space.
That was probably the scariest place to be an owner.
The worst.
Less than 10 years ago.
Oh, you thought it was dead. You're just like,
it was dead. It was dead for a hot minute.
Dude, well, it's back.
It's
baby.
back.
Yeah, retail's back.
And I know this topic is usually led by grocery anchored retail.
That's right. And restaurants are doing well. They have traditionally done well in that space, I know. So, you certainly have a lot of experiential type things.
God, remember that term?
Experiential.
Remember when all retail had to be experiential? What is that? So you just had to have people come in and have an experience?
Hello, you see this new Netflix thing.
This is experiential.
That's pretty cool. I mean, for those listening don't know, I mean, Netflix is now having its own experiential concept in, I want to say in Philadelphia and Dallas.
Yeah. Did they mention what that looks like? So if I'm watching Peaky Blinders, do I walk in and
you have to wear
smell horse manure?
Yeah,
and
you have
get shot?
You have to wear age-specific clothing that matches that era.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cosplay.
Yeah.
As the kids call it.
That's what it's going to be.
Yeah. I can't wait to cosplay.
I wonder
if
if when you're at that Netflix experiential concept, if you can do what I do, which is just watch every single trailer and preview and keep flipping shows every single 2 minutes.
And you burn just like an hour.
Dude, I never watch a whole show. I watch one and then it's like 2 minutes and then I'm like, next. And I guess you can't do that.
And then it's an hour later.
Yeah.
Who needs the show?
Yeah, no, it's...
So you're telling me retail's back?
Yeah, I'll tell you, U.S. shopping centers, big surge, reaching its fastest pace in 20 years. Post-pandemic demand has driven that boom with an average leasing time of just 8.5 months. 80% of shopping center spaces are leased within 6 months of availability. Wow. And 98% of retail space is leased within 9 months. Pretty big change of events. And, the CEO of Simon Property Group, David Simon, mentioned we're not immune to the macro environment. And frankly, it's realistic to assume we may go through a reasonable slowdown here coming up. So all good things come to an end a little bit. I don't think it's going to be a huge nosedive, but you certainly, at least according to Mr. Simon, it's not going to be at this
Simon
pace
Property
forever.
Groups are really interesting. You've seen how much investment they've done in the actual brick and mortar stores. They're getting behind brands now.
Smart.
Yeah,
it's smart.
I'm curious to see where they take that. I know they've focused on a lot of venture capital within the real estate space. I don't know whether that's real estate tech,
right?
Whether it's more experiential experiences,
right?
But I know that when it comes to dealing with the brunt of shopping malls, those guys were the first to take big hits, and they were also the first to rebound out of it and do something new. I also, I'm curious how the record was for these lease ups in prior years. I think you said it's about 8.5 months for leasing. I mean, that's not a scary number to me. That seems like there's a lot of tenant demand.
I think there is.
So my experts, please reach out to us.
Yeah, more experts.
More experts.
Come on, if you're an expert, come on the pod. Let's talk.
I would love to hear, your experiences, whether you're a retail leasing broker, whether you're on the asset management side. I'd love to hear what you're seeing, where you're seeing it. And, retail to me, it's a sweetheart. It's a real sweetheart.
It's a cool product to be involved in. It's cool, right?
Yeah.
It's cool. It's cool to be like, hey, I'm at this restaurant and, oh yeah, I own this space,
Yeah.
That's kind of neat.
That's what you imagine.
That's like those guys who like own 1% of a restaurant or a bar and they tell like everyone that they own it.
Shout out to our 1%ers.
Yeah.
If you're the 1% owner.
I get it. Listen, I totally get it.
Yeah. I like it.
Okay. We got one more thing I think to talk about. And that's something you had kind of mentioned earlier, the Fed's yearly stress tests. Pretty telling stuff there.
Yeah, the Fed's recent stress test. So I think I was texting you about this.
You were, but I'll just tell you. I mean,
I love this topic.
Results showed that of the 31 banks that took this test, they would lose $685 billion, which is an increase from $144 billion last year.
Sorry, it's an increase of $144 billion.
Okay.
So last year, banks would have lost $144 billion less. That's like your weekend budget. Your typical weekend budget, $144 billion.
Again,
Jack, that's a crazy number.
Money's not real. You know what I mean?
Maybe
once we get up to these numbers, I'm kind of like, what's the point?
Maybe we've been desensitized with all the fear mongering in the real estate headlines and office blowing up and multifamily softening.
Right.
Are we not supposed to be afraid of this? Is the liquidity crunch no longer a thing? 31 banks. And again, guys, this isn't Joe Schmo's regional bank that started, because your dad and a couple of buddies from the country club needed to hide their deposit somewhere, right?
We'll get more detail. We're having Jerome Powell on in 2 weeks.
Amazing.
And so
shout out to Jay Powell.
That's not true. But
what a great guy.
Maybe one day. Who knows?
But Jack, this is such I don't know. To me, this is the stuff that really starts to scare me. So the 31 major banking institutions tested that they would lose almost $700 billion.
And the kicker is JP Morgan said that its losses during the exam should actually be higher.
It should be higher.
So it's kind of like a flex now.
Yeah. It's the kid in class saying, "Oh, you forgot my extra credit."
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
They would have lost more money.
Yeah.
That's terrifying. So what happens?
I don't know.
Like where are we? What is the market telling us right
listen,
now?
I think they're trying to deleverage. Well, we've already kind of talked about that a little bit. I think they're trying to make some moves in a good direction. I'm no economist.
Yeah.
We'll maybe have an economist on. No, I'm not. Shocker.
Beats me.
Yeah.
This is news to me.
2 + 2 = 4, Alex. 2 + 2
So I've heard.
4.
Apparently not in JP Morgan's case.
That's right. That's right.
Jamie Dimon,
also
do better next time.
Also going to be a guest.
Should
we anything like before we go we want to talk about or anything noteworthy?
I think we've covered a lot today.
Listen, we don't want to bore everybody, right? I mean,
don't want to bore.
We want to go through some topics.
Yeah,
have some fun with it. Not take ourselves too serious.
How cool is this, Jack?
It's very cool.
Somebody trusted us with a podcast.
It's
shout out to CRE Daily.
Yeah. If you have negative comments about this podcast, keep them to yourself.
Yeah.
If you have positive comments, all day, baby.
All day.
Just we'll take it.
Send them to Jack. Send them to me too.
Send the negative ones to Alex. Send the positive ones to me. Yeah. And we'll take it from there.
I love it.
All right, cool.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.